longer tonight. We do. We have Mary's iPhone is cooking along. Okay. Great. Okay, so we were going to start with the wheaten bread. Now, this wheaten bread recipe, I hope you got your recipes through, okay? This wheaten bread recipe is a little bit more like a cake type of mixture. So it bakes for a long time in the oven on a low heat. So of course, skill-wise, not too complicated. We just need to measure out our ingredients. So I've got coarse wholemeal flour. I've got some plain flour, just a little bit of plain flour. I've got a little bit of sugar, salt, bicarbonate of soda, and there's something missing here. Porridge oats or oat bran. If you have oat bran, it's a little bit finer. Otherwise, I'm just using some porridge oats, so quite a lot of ingredients on the table, and of course then buttermilk as well. So I'll just get the buttermilk out of the fridge. This is quite a big recipe, but I think when you're going to put the oven on for a very long time like that, you may as well have stuff in the oven, you know, with it, not just one wee loaf on its own. So this could potentially make 3 medium-sized loaves or 2 big ones. I'm just going to fill them up to be quite big. Now, it's a nice, soft, crumbly type of wheaten, so sometimes it's easier to cut if you divide it between 3. But tonight, I'm just going to divide it between the 2. Think. So we'll just get organized. So we'll just weigh out the ingredients. So starting with the coarse wholemeal flour, then we want to measure out, it's 1.5 pounds, which is, let's see, 680 grams. So if I bring that round here, maybe you can, I'm trying to do too many things tonight in the one go, but we'll get there. So 680 or 1.5. So it's quite a lot. There we go. So I'm just checking if you can see me okay from there. So just into a big mixing bowl, really. As big a one as you've got. And it goes. And then we want to put in some porridge or oat bran. And it's 5 ounces. So I'm using old terminology. I think maybe this recipe was given to me in pounds and ounces, so I've sort of stuck to that, but I think I have maybe changed it over to metric on the recipe, but it's 5 ounces of your oats, whatever way they come. Oat bran is not easily got, actually. You need oat bran, you have to get in the health shop. You can't seem to get it in the supermarkets anymore. And in fact, did you get some, what have you got? You've got porridge oats, Louise, have you? And somebody's asked a question there, do I not sieve the flour? Not coarse wholemeal, it's not possible. If you take a look at it, it's very, I don't know if you can see, if I'm trying to get up close, it's rough, it's a really rough type of flour, so it wouldn't sieve, it wouldn't go through the sieve at all. So no, don't sieve the flour for that one. So porridge oats are in. Yes, another thing then was the coarse wholemeal flour used to be very readily available in smaller shops like Spars and Mace and everything. So, but recently it's not so much. Now, I don't know whether people have got out of the way baking wheaten bread or whatever, but it used to be one that you could find easily in the shops. But now I did get that in the Eurospar, so it's not too bad. And I'm putting some plain flour in, and that's about 4 ounces. just in it goes as well. So we want to keep this nice and simple. That's the most of that going in. Now we want to get our teaspoons, and we want to put in some salt, some sugar, and some bicarbonate of soda. Now what I will say is with the bicarbonate of soda, you really want to mix it in well whenever it's dry, because you don't want it clumping together once the buttermilk hits it, because you don't want to get a bite of that at all in your bread. So sometimes it can go a wee bit lumpy. So we'll just pay attention to that whenever we're giving it a wee mix through. Just make sure there's no wee lumps, and just even, nice even teaspoon. So there's 3 of those going in. Now, I think in the recipe I've put 2 of each of salt and sugar. You can keep me right if I did or not. That's just maybe, I think originally it might have been 2 ounces of sugar, but any sugar will do. Any sugar is fine for this. So that's caster sugar, which I just happen to have there. But brown sugar or granulated, or whatever, that's not going in that. Don't put that in there, sure. So some salt then as well. So this is really just a mix it all together type of recipe. And then it's oil that is going in instead of butter into this. So I'm actually going to use a sunflower oil. You could use an olive oil. I don't have very much left, and I'm keeping it for the crusty bread. So you could use olive oil, sunflower oil, vegetable oil, anything really can be used here in the way of oil. So I'm going to get a big spoon and just mix my dry ingredients through first, and then I'm going to add the buttermilk and the oil at the end. So I'm just going to get those all mixed up. So you can tell already it is going to make quite a big mixture. Now, really the key to this wheaten bread mix is to allow it to cook long and slow, and then allow it to cool down as much as you can before cutting into it, because it sort of completes its cooking process after you take it out of the oven. Now, they do make big loaves, but they freeze well. So you could wrap half and put it in the freezer. So just really well mixed in, and that's to avoid that bicarbonate of soda again clumping together. And then we'll get our buttermilk. Now it's about, it works out at 1 litre, which I think is about 1 3/4 of pints. So I'm just going to get that and mix it in. And then if you're baking it tonight, if you're doing this alongside me and you want this cooked tonight, go ahead and put your oven on now and put it on at about, I would heat it up at about 130, 140 just to get it warmed up. And then you're going to keep it, you'll know your own oven, but you're going to keep it quite low. If I go below 130, it barely cooks it for me. So you'll know your own oven, 130, 140 maybe, you know, or if it's very hot oven, 120. You could put it up a little tiny bit like this, but what you don't want is it being sticky and raw in the middle and being a bit crispy on the outside. So it's better just to have the patience with it and let it cook all the way through. So yeah, that works out. Maybe even a little bit more. There's just a little bit left in that second pint there. So it is a litre. And then I'm just going to add that in. And I'm just pouring it in. I'm not going to start to mix yet. So I'm going to get my oil in too. And it's about 1/4 of a pint of oil. So if you have that measurement on your measuring jug, I need my glasses on. So it does seem like quite a lot, but in it goes 2. So that's it, rough and ready. And now it's just the big mix really, so I'll just get these things out of the way. We want to get this mixed up.
Sharon, Maura's asked, can you use rapeseed oil?
Yes, yes you can. In fact, I've said you can use olive oil. You can use olive oil, but it will give it a wee bit of a flavour. If you don't mind that, it's fine to use olive oil. Rapeseed doesn't carry much flavour across into your food, so that's a good one to use actually. Like I say, I've just used sunflower oil there. So what we really want to do now is just get this mixed in really well. And then we're going to line our tins. So we just want to put, I've got some non-stick baking paper here, although you could make it easy on yourself and just grease the tins. It'll work okay. I just take that extra precaution of lining it with the baking paper, and then I can literally just lift them sort of out of there because I'm used to making, you know, a few more in the one go. Just makes it easier. But if you grease that with a little bit of butter, it should come out fine. So you can see as you mix this that it's, oh, I'm a messy cook. It's a little bit more cake-like than, you know, there's no kneading or anything with this type of bread. So it is quite a wet mixture, but you do need to mix it up very well because you will find there's wee dry bits lurking about there and we want to get them all really well mixed in. Now I've made this, oh goodness, I am messy. I've made this, it seems maybe I put a little bit of extra buttermilk in it maybe because it does seem quite moist, but it's fine. It's going to just maybe take a little longer. So if it seems a bit thicker than mine, that's okay. So it's somewhere in between. It should be quite fluid though, if you know what I mean. It's easy to mix, easy to stir. And like I say, it's not that we're pouring it, but as you can see, it does move of its own accord. So it's that sort of consistency that we're looking for here. So once I've got that well mixed in, then we're either going to line your tins or grease your tins or both. And then we're going to get it in there. So I'll just look for a little bit of butter. We don't want it getting stuck in here now, that's for sure. So just give it a really good greasing. I'm just looking, I might have lifted out smaller tins. So it's really 2-pound tins. I think these are a tiny bit small, so I might get 3 small ones out of this. If you've got nice big loaf tins, you'll get 2 loaves out of this. Now this will toast up for a few days. Sometimes when we make wheaten bannocks, I make that with the kids at the clubs, and because they can mix it up and it cooks in about 45 minutes, but it needs to be eaten very fresh. You know, this one here will toast up for a few days afterwards. So I'm going to see how many if I can get maybe an extra one out of this or not. So you just, whoever's cooking along there, you'll maybe know yourself what tins you have for it. I'm just tucking that in quite roughly, leaving a little bit out around the edge. I'll tidy it up a little bit, but I'm not too particular about that. I'm just going to give that a little trim around, but it's just an extra protection. The grease tin will work as well.
So if you didn't have that paper, Sharon, you could just grease it and put the mix in?
Grease it. It will be fine. You might just need to let it cool a good bit down before it's coming out, you know, and maybe a little loosen around the edges.
Yeah.
Maybe just with a little butter knife, but at the very, very end. But it should come out no problem. I've done it both ways. I just find this very handy, you know. And if I was making them maybe to be a little bit more perfect looking, I would take a lot more time over greasing the tin, because that puts a few wee creases around the edge. But if it's just for me, for my breakfast, I'm happy enough. So I'll move my spuds out of the way there. So really all we're going to do is just almost just tipping that in. Like so. Now I'm just going to put it about 2/3 of the way up there, just to see how I get on. So I'm going to do this one with a greased one, so I can maybe show the difference later and send through pictures. I'm just checking the size of my tins here, whether I'm going to do, sorry, that's my dog who's come in very, very thirsty. Mika.
Is that him drinking the water?
You hear it?
I didn't know what that was.
Sorry about that. Mika, sit down. She's just come in the back door from a walk there. So actually just looking at that, I think I have enough for 3 small tins. So I think you need to make that call nearly yourself. If you've got nice big 2-pound loaf tins, fill them up for 2 big loaves, let it cook a bit longer. I'm going to get an extra one of these and make 3 slightly smaller ones. So Louise and Mary, was it, that's cooking? Maybe we can check what you're doing. Are you getting 2 or 3 loaves?
I've got 2, Sharon. So
2 big ones, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. And what about yourself? Mary, have you got
3?
3?
3 small ones.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do 3 small ones here. So just being aware of the cooking time. The bigger ones, the 2, is going to take a good hour and a half. The other ones might be ready just a little bit earlier than that, okay? Really, the only way you can check these is with a skewer or sharp knife. And if it comes out sticky, then it's not quite ready.
Sharon, Deirdre asks, are those £1 loaf tins you're using?
These are actually randomly they're £1.50. They were sold in a metric size, whatever that would be then. So well, I think they're 700 grams is what they are. So it works out just over £1.50. £2 loaf. The recipe was made for 2 £2 loaf tins. Now I could fill these on up, but then I wouldn't get, I'd have some left over and it wouldn't be enough for another one. So I'm just keeping them at about 2/3 full here. So I'll maybe put a little bit of baking paper on this one. And then as soon as you have those ready, you can just pop them on into the oven. Now they're not going to be ready obviously during our time, but
Can you send pictures to us, Sharon?
it is a very nice recipe now, I have to say.
Sharon, can you send pictures when they're ready, when they come out of the oven?
Yeah, I send pictures through.
Send them to me or to Anne-Marie and we'll send them out.
Yeah.
It'd be good to see what they turn out like.
Later on, because I am going to do, I don't know if anyone else is doing the crusty bread with me or not, but I am going to run through a crusty loaf here too. Now it might, no, it's not going to be ready on time, I don't think, but it's okay. I'll send some pictures through tonight of it. So that's my third one there. Now I'm just going to check them that they are even. There's a little dry bit there, needs a bit of mixing in. No, they are pretty even, so. Yeah, I'm quite happy that they're all just about the same size. And I'm going to set mine over. I'm not going to put my oven on yet because it's so noisy, so I'm just going to set them over to the side. Great. And then, is anyone else there doing the crusty loaf, or is that, it's maybe too much bread? You can just watch if you want to.
Oh, I think Louise is doing the crusty loaf. Are you, Louise?
I might give it a go. I'm just thinking I only have 3 bread tins, so.
Well, this one's not going to go, this is going to go on just a flat tray. It's not going.
All right, okay. I'll give it a go.
So you may as well. You're
Yeah.
here now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think give it a go. It's a great one. Do you normally make bread, Louise, or?
Yeah. Sorry. I make wheaten bread, but I've never made sort of white, that sort of crusty bread before. So I'm interested to try that.
Brilliant. Okay, this is a good technique. This is an easy way of doing it. So, so I'm just going to start then. For this bread, we need the strong flour. So there's no substitutes for that for this particular bread. Strong flour is hard to get in the smaller shops. You can get it. That one's Tesco organic one, and you can get it in Sainsbury's and Tesco's and Asda and all the bigger supermarkets. We have a wee grocers in Lisburn called Greens Food Fair, and you can get it in there, but a lot of smaller shops don't stock bread flour. During lockdown then, we couldn't get bread flour at all anywhere because everybody had decided they were going to take up baking bread. So I had a big sack of bread flour. My sister's a chef and she was able to get it wholesale for me. So I spent a lot of time going around dropping off little bags of bread flour to people who weren't able to get any, but that seems to have calmed down. I'm sure that bread flour is still sitting in a lot of people's cupboards, but so what we're going to do is this recipe will make a crusty loaf, or it's the same recipe, Louise and Mary, if you're making it too. It's the same recipe for pizza and for flatbreads. So you could make 4 pizzas out of this. You can make a crusty loaf out of this. You could make dough balls. You can make about 16, 24 dough balls out of it. So it's all the same mix. So it's a good one to have in the bag as such. So 400 grams then of the bread flour into a mixing bowl. And I think what's great about this is it's easy, but it's natural. So when you think of the additives that are in some of the loaves nowadays that are on the supermarket shelves as well, like white sliced bread, unfortunately, it's not just as natural as we would like to think it is for a toast. This, however, I don't even have one here to be able to compare it to, but There's a long list of additives and things like that in some of today's manufactured bread. So this is very simple. It's got the bread flour, it's got a bit of yeast, it's got some water, and if you want, it's got some olive oil as well. So 400 grams.
Sharon, Maura's asked, can you use bread flour for the like a scones or anything?
No, soda bread flour for scones. You can use soda bread flour is the best one to use for scones because it's got the soda and all in it, but not this strong bread flour. This is particularly designed for the yeast and the kneading and stuff like that, so it releases the gluten, and it's really for bread making, this particular type of, and you can get wholemeal as well. Now I'm making a white crusty here, but the only difference with making it with the strong wholemeal, not the wholemeal we were using for the wheaten, it has to have the strong on it, is that it takes a bit more water. So this recipe here will do, like I said, for pizzas, flatbreads, dough balls, and a crusty loaf. After that, once you get used to working with it, you could start maybe doing half and half wholemeal or adding extra things into it. But this is just the basic recipe. So there's the flour. Again, we don't need to sieve it here either. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of yeast. Now this is the easy bake yeast, so it doesn't need to be activated with water first of all. So there's different types of yeast, but if it says fast action or easy bake, then this is the one. So I'm just going to get my teaspoon, and I'm just putting 1 level teaspoon at one side of the bowl, and then I've got my just table salt is fine here. And I'm just putting a teaspoon of it on the other side of the bowl. And then measuring jug, I'm going to measure out about 300 milliliter. I'm not sure if I actually sent the recipe through or not for the crusty bread. Louise, did I? Maybe didn't. And somebody's asked, does the yeast come in a tin? That one does. Alison's comes in a tin. I have another one here though. That one comes in little sachets there. That's Hovis, and it says fast action on it, and it comes in little sachets. I don't really use that anymore because the sachets don't suit my measurements. I think there's a different measurement per sachet, so I'm always left with things like little clothes pegs and stuff on them. So I just find that it's easier in that wee tin. It just keeps it nice and fresh, and you can just.
I have no experience of using yeast, but I did try during lockdown to make a bread, and I went into the local shop looking for yeast and they didn't have it, but they sent me out, what would it be, raw yeast or something with like a wee cube, like brown sugar cube off it, and the bread turned out remarkably well. I just did the once, but I'm very interested now to see that Alison's powdered yeast, that is.
Yes, it is. That's the dried yeast. The fresh yeast is slightly different to work with them, but can be better. It's hard to get fresh yeast. It's mostly Polish shops that will stock the fresh yeast.
Yes, this was in a home bakery, in an in-store bakery. That's how I got the fresh stuff, and I didn't know what really to do with it, but it worked out well.
It would work well. It is well. It's a bit, the only thing about it is now I have my daughter can be a bit sensitive about smells, and I had a big lump of this stuff in the fridge, and right enough, every time you open the fridge, like it was stuck. It was really stinky. So my yeast wasn't allowed in the fridge. A bit like camembert. I'm not allowed camembert in the fridge.
That's good to know that now, and you would recommend that powder.
I would recommend that. Keeps it fresh, and you just scoop away at it. Just the wee lid.
Can I ask you another question, Sharon? I made the shepherd's pie, and I ordered the green lentils. I was very happy with how it turned out. And when I ordered the lentils, it was a tin of green lentils I got. So I read the tin and it said rinse them out, which I did, and I put them in and everything was fine. But when I was getting a grocery order, then I got this, can you see this pack of dried lentils? But
Yes.
there's no instructions in that. Are they cooked, or do I just wash them and fire them in, or do I have
No, you need to cook those up first. Now, if you were doing that as part of your shepherd's pie,
to?
give them a little rinse first, because any dried goods needs a little bit of a rinse. And you could add them raw to it, but just add more liquid, and then they'll cook in it, if you know what I mean. Or just cook them. You would boil those for about, you just boil those in a pot for about half an hour.
All right, simmer them kind of thing.
Just simmer them and then drain them. So like a bit, a pot of boiling water, and add them into it, cook them, drain them, and then they're
There's
cooked.
no instructions in that package, which is very, very strange. So
Well,
I
it is,
didn't know.
because some dried goods, it's very important how long you cook them for,
No, doesn't
like,
say that. Canada, that's all it tells me.
No,
Thanks
Is it
very
you
much.
cook the full packet, or is it just the amount of lentils for the recipe? Do you know? There's probably more in there than what you actually need, isn't there, for the cottage
Oh,
pie?
there's 500 grams in this, and I just ordered it, in a delivery to home. And
Aye.
the first week they sent me a tin, which is it said in the tin, rinse them and so on and so forth, and put it in the shepherd's pie. And then when I ordered lentils again, because I was, getting very good at this cooking thing. This is what came, and just didn't know, so I was looking forward to asking you tonight. So thanks.
Well, somebody's brought up a very good point there. That's going to make quite a lot of lentils there. You've got a good supply there. I would go with just like a couple of cupfuls of it, maybe even a third of that packet might be enough for one of those shepherd's pies. However, the soup that I'm making tonight with the red lentils, you could easily make with those green lentils as well, because it's not a blended soup. The green lentils are better left whole. So they're, we don't blend this one.
Thanks
so
very much.
So you've got quite a bit there, but don't worry, they'll be like my spice cupboard. They can sit there for a long time.
I'll try and use them now when I've got your advice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I've loads of recipes for green lentils actually, so I must fire a few more through. So let's see, we're going to put the water in this then. So what we're looking for here is just below 300 milliliters of lukewarm water is what's going in. It has to be lukewarm. If it's too hot, it'll kill off the yeast. If it's too cold, it won't activate the yeast. So I usually say 300 milliliters, but I'm just, for working with it for the first time, I'm going to say 275. So just a little bit below the 300 milliliters. And we're going to mix that in with a butter knife. So Louise, if you're joining in, it's not with your hands and it's not with a wooden spoon, it's with a little butter knife that we're going to spread that, okay? So I'm not going to spread it, I'm going to mix it. Sorry, I'm thinking about my butter. So I'll just get that now. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, sometimes people are put off with this type of bread making because of all the kneading, but you don't need to knead. So this is a way of letting time sort of do the work for you, so it's also not too strenuous. But what we're going to do is, with the dry knife, just give the dry ingredients a quick mix through, like so, and then we're just going to chuck that water in, that lukewarm water. So it should feel warmish to the touch. Actually, just as I've touched mine, it's not that warm. So it should feel a little warm. I don't seem to have any hot water in my house at all. Okay, so So about 275. You definitely don't want to go over 300 for this. I've started doing it at 250 ml with the kids simply because it's easier for them to work with. But if you want the crusty bread a little bit lighter, the water is actually what.
Sharon, you asked, did you send out the flour, the bread recipe? You only sent out the wheaten and the two sweet.
Yes.
That's what Anne-Marie sent out today. So maybe if you
You're right. Just as I thought about that, then I hadn't actually sent that through. So I'll send that through.
Yeah, the crusty bread one in case, because just to get the amounts and all that.
No, you're right. Especially if anybody else wants to try it and they don't have it there. So 400 flour, 300 water, and it's warm water, and that's what we're doing. You pour the whole lot in, and you just mix it with this knife, okay? And just incorporate and really just getting the flour and the water mixed together. Now it's not going to be completely mixed, so it is going to look like that. It looks like it's sort of all craggy. It's not perfectly mixed. It's not wet. It's not dry. It's somewhere in between. This is just the first mix, so it won't pick it all up. It won't turn into a ball of dough. But what we do is just give it a good mix round to try and get it mixed in as best we can. And at that point, we're going to leave it. So we're going to cover it now for 10 minutes. And you're going to cover it with a clean tea towel or a plastic bag or something like that. Something to keep that, that nice warmth in there. The warm water's in. We want to get the yeast activated. So there, I have a little co-op bag, so I'm just putting it on the top like a lid like that, but you can put just a clean tea towel as well. So what we don't want is drafts and things in here. Now, this is a method where I leave it for 10 minutes, then I mix it again, then I leave it for 10 minutes, then I mix it again. So traditionally, for making a loaf, you would probably start the kneading process straight away, but I'm not doing that. So I'm leaving it to one side and either set a timer or a mental timer. I've other things to do here anyway, because we're going to put some soup on. So we're going to leave that, and we're going to be able to check it as it goes along. Now, when this bread is ready to go in the oven, it'll be in about an hour's time. And it goes in for about 25 minutes. So that's just to give you an idea.
Sharon, sorry, I missed a question there before from Deirdre. Was that a level teaspoon of yeast? I'm probably
yes. Level of yeast and level of salt.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's our measuring possibly out of the way now for a little while. We just set that bread to the one side. We're going to make our soup. Yes, you could cover it with a plate. I've just seen that question. If you have a lovely big plate, depending on the size of your bowl, but we want to keep it from drafts. We don't want drafts going in the side of it there. So, so I think I'm going to start with the sweet potato and lentil. Has anyone chosen that? Have we lost our other cook along? Oh, you're there. Sweet potato and lentil. Great.
Yes.
Same here. Okay. I'm going to do that first. Oh, I've got a question there about the temperature. Is that for the crusty bread?
Yes.
Yeah. It starts, I preheat the oven for the crusty bread at around 200, and then I turn it down a little bit, like 10 or 15 minutes into it to 180. So it's quite a hot start, and then turn it down, but approximately 180. So it's not going to be the same as the wheaten bread at all. The wheaten bread's in for a long, slow haul there. So, but we're going, I had also got potato and leek on the menu tonight too. Now it's quite a simple recipe. So we'll see how we get on here with the sweet potato and lentil one first. I did send my husband to the garden to pick the leeks for this. So, and I've just finished getting the muck off them. It was wild. But I'll show you some nice, you're not going to get fresher than what we got there today. But boys a dear, there was some cleaning in them now, but they're lovely, like they really are. And I'm looking forward to cooking them up, especially after trying to deal with I think that puts people off sometimes, isn't it? All the cleaning of things like that. But I know they're going to taste lovely. But we'll get the sweet potato and lentil one on. So we're going to start with an onion. We've got a pepper as well. So we've got onion, pepper, tin of tomatoes, our dried lentils, which need to be rinsed as well. So anything you buy dried, it's always a good idea to give it a wee rinse in the sieve. Basil doesn't go in until the end. So we'll just start first, I think, with the onion and the pepper to get going. I'd said maybe 2 or 3 sweet potatoes. It really depends on the size of them. I mean, this is a Whopper here. And if I quickly weigh that, actually would be the best thing to do, and then I could tell you. Yeah, I mean, that one's weighing in at 600 grams there, so that's quite a substantial sweet potato. So you're probably looking somewhere between 400 and 600 grams, you know, also depending on whether you really like the sweet potato content of it or not. Some people prefer just a wee bit of sweet potato and more of the lentils. So I'm just going to get an onion here, and we're just going to finely chop the onion. If you want to put some garlic in it as well, you can. I was testing these out today, so I was working with a group of children today, and these are little kids' knives. They're so cute, aren't they? They're called dog knives because theirs is it looks like a wee dog there and his wee nose. And they were great. So because we were going to sell these on our website, they're for young children, like sort of age 3, 4, 5. But they're pretty sharp, and they made a whole thing. They made potato and leek soup today, and they cut all the potatoes with these. So because
you gave a 3-year-old a knife.
Well, I give a 3-year-old a knife.
4-year-old.
I think they're great wee grip on
Supervised,
them. As long as they're supervised. Now the older ones, sort of 6, 7, and 8, I was very contented that they were working away with these. You know, these were very little. They're sharp, but they're not too sharp. But sometimes for kids, they have these plastic knives, and they're just useless.
I know, yeah.
They don't cut anything, you know. And I think if it was, it would put you off. You know, I think they need to see results from what they're doing, and not just chopping bananas. So, but however, they're still sitting out. I'm not going to attempt to chop everything tonight with them, though. So. We'll just finely chop our onion. So again, I just done first with the skin still on it. And a good sharp knife, you'd need it for this one. It can be a red onion, it doesn't matter. Red onions are better than white onions. And we're just going to finely chop it and get it in the pot. You add all these ingredients if you want. If you're following any sort of dietary requirements that don't want any oil or butter or anything like that. Otherwise, you can saute the onion for a little bit first and follow it by the pepper. But having done it both ways for soup, you can do this without a drop of oil at all. So it's not getting, so the only thing is here, just keeping it small, not big chunks. So just trying your best to keep the onion finely chopped. And we might go over the 10 minutes for the bread there. It doesn't matter. It's better that it's sitting there while you're doing something else. The longer you can leave it sitting, the better. And I think if we get the onion and the pepper done, and then we can have a look at our bread again. So Now this makes a good bit of soup because the lentils expand, obviously, and the sweet potatoes nice and chunky. So you might even find that you can, sometimes I make this and it's too thick and that's what I sort of feel like eating, but then the next day you could maybe add a little bit more water to it and thin it out a wee bit, you know. So I just pop that in the food waste. And so if you are going to saute the onion, I would go ahead now and just get it into the pot on a low heat. With, if you want to use a little bit of olive oil or whatever you want, or I have coconut oil there that I sometimes use, just something to stop it sticking. And then we'll get the pepper done and then we'll return to our bread. So I've used red pepper. It just makes this, it's quite a sunny sort of soup actually, because it's got reds and oranges and a little bit of green for the basil, which is a bit of a summery flavour as well. But you can use the green lentils in this too, if you want. And also if you like smoked bacon or chorizo sausage, this goes nice as well, and it gives a lovely flavour through the lentils. This is just the veggie version of this. So I'm just quartering the pepper, taking the insides out, and again we want to finely chop this. And then I'm going to let it join the onion in the pan for a few moments. If you're not sauteing the onion, that's okay. Just add the pepper in with it. And we'll just continue to add the ingredients in a few moments. Again, I've used that vegetable stock there, that marigold one. I find it easy to work with. Just, there is a vegan one then in that range. But any stock, you know, if you've got chicken stock or something, or stock cubes, will be fine for this. If you don't have the basil, you know, it's still a nice soup without, but I just think it gives it a wee lift at the end, and it goes well with the tomatoey flavour that we're adding it to. Tomatoes and peppers. Or even a spoonful of pesto if you have that.
Sharon, this might seem like a random question, but you know when you make your own bread or your own soup or whatever, can you calculate the calories and things like that?
Yes, you can. Now, the best thing to do is to have one of those sort of like on your phone or on your tablet or your computer. You can enter in, there's like calorie counters, or there's apps like MyFitnessPal, or there's one called Calorie Counter. And basically you can type in the amount, the quantities, and it will calculate the calories for you. So usually what you would do then is, if you were in the way of calorie counting, you would keep it a sort of track of those, if you know what I mean. So you would keep it like, so you get to know, you know, how much is in a tin of tomatoes, or how much is in a scoop of lentils, or, you know. Now I know for the likes of Slimming World, whenever it comes to things, is it, what do they call them? Sins, is it?
Sins.
Free, so sin-free I know that soups are very, very good for Slimming World because they encourage eating vegetables and pulses and things like that. So as long as you're not using any oil at the start, then they would be considered sin-free if they're vegetarian soups, you know. But yeah, it's the best way to do it is to type it in exactly into one of those calculators. I found
that would put me off making my own stuff sometimes, because I do calorie count, so I always look at the calories and everything. And then I think, if you were making wheaten bread or you're making something yourself, how on earth would you calculate the calories? But that's good.
You just literally have to type them in, because I've done all that. My Fitness Pal is quite good for it.
Yeah.
You type it in exactly what you're putting in, but
you need to be very honest about it, don't you?
You need to be very honest about it, and you don't type in if you've had a wee glass of wine or anything with
exactly.
You don't need to type that in. Just type in the necessities, and usually, you know what, it is quite time consuming if you're calorie counting, but you find that you get
you'll get used to it, yeah.
And then if you stick to some of the similar recipes over and over again, you don't need to think about it, you know, the next time. So
thank you. That's good.
There's no shortcuts with that, though. That's what I learned.
Oh, I know.
Yes, I can see the appeal for that. It used to get on my nerves. I had to do that. I did that My Fitness Pal one, and you were typing in, you know, 1 sugar in your coffee, and then, you know, and then I was like, oh my goodness, it's so time consuming. But it opens your eyes as well, though. That's the other thing.
I count calories, but I kind of know the calories and everything that I eat. So that's why I eat the same stuff all the time.
But you get a few shockers at the beginning. I definitely, you know, find myself going like, especially something like a wee bit of mayonnaise, something like that. You're going, oh my goodness, I have no idea.
I know.
No idea. Okay, so if the onions and the peppers are in, give them a little stir around and our bread. Okay, so got another question there, have we?
Yes. When would you add the bacon to the soup? Sheena?
Now, if you were doing bacon, you would add it with the onions and peppers at the start.
Right.
Now, what I would say, we're probably going to use our hands in the bread quite soon. So if you were using garlic or onions or anything, you might want to freshen up with the hands here before we hit the bread.
And Eve has asked, would the bacon be cooked when you put it in with the pepper and onion?
You could put it in, no, you can put it all with the, like at the same time perhaps as the onion, or maybe just before the onion, but at the start of the process anyway. You could saute the onion until it's cooked and add a little bit of the bacon. Ultimately, all of this is going to be cooked for a long, slow time. So it's fine to just put it in at the beginning. The reason I say put it in at the beginning is because if it's in a little bit of oil and you're sauteing it like that, or it has a little bit of fat on it itself, you want that to be browned and sealed a little bit at the start. So rather than just adding it in randomly to the soup near the end, you know. So if you are using that, and with the chorizo as well, if you're using chorizo and you chop it up, it releases the flavor and the oils from being sauteed a little bit first. So it's better to put it in at the start. Okay, so we're back to our bread here, just letting the onion and the pepper go slowly for a moment, if you're doing that. And we're just going to take the bread back out. Now we need our olive oil here, so a little drop of olive oil is going to really help. I mean, if you don't have olive oil and you've only got rapeseed oil or sunflower oil or whatever, that's fine. It just works well with olive oil. Now this bit is the tricky bit actually. So if you're doing the crusty bread, you might want to look this way, and I will maybe bring the laptop down and try to show you up close for the the bread. So let's see. Yes, I think that's me there. So that's the bread there. There's still a wee bit of a craggy sort of mess. I'm going to put a little bit on my hands for the oil over the bowl. We're going to keep it in the bowl. So we're drizzling a little bit on your hands and a little bit in here. Now, the next bit, this is the tricky part. This is the movement that we're going to use here. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to place my left hand just gently into the center of the bowl. Now it's tricky here because I'm trying to hold it up at the same time. So what I'm going to do is just pull the bread at one side like this. So I'm lifting it up and I'm folding it into the center. And I'm trying to keep my bowl tipped here so I can show you at the same time. So I'm going to keep moving the bowl around. So I'm lifting it up and I'm tucking it in. There's dry bits, there's wet bits. It's not fully mixed yet. And I'm just gently rotating that round, holding it in the center, lifting it from the edges and folding it into the center. So I'm doing this about 8 times, maybe a little bit more. I might just go round another little bit. It should start feeling a little bit more like a ball of dough now. So although I would often say to the kids, don't stick your fingers right in it nearly, try to keep it like scoopy, sort of scoopy hands. And once you've done that a few times, you should have, it's becoming more like a ball of dough now. Now it's still really messy underneath, but a little bit flatter on the top, okay? So if that's working, you could lift it out. I quite like to lift it out. I see different people doing different things. You could, it's quite wet, so I wouldn't put it on the worktop to work with, but you can just tuck it a few more times like that, where you're sort of tucking it underneath, almost looks sort of brain-like underneath, yet becoming a little bit smoother on the top, and just tucking it in. And then we're going to do the same thing again. Once we've tucked it all in underneath like that, just set the yucky side down and the smoother side on the top. Now, by no means is mine smooth yet, but I'm going to put it back there and I'm going to leave it there again. So it works quite well with making soup because we're going from one job to the next. So we can tuck it back in, put its lid on it and set it off to the side again for 10 minutes. Now, you might have got a little bit of bread dough on the hands here, so we just have to get that off. Hopefully it's not too sticky, because it's not a great one to get down the sinks. I've clogged many a school sink up with bread dough and children's big mess. But anyway, so flour is usually the best method for taking that off. If you've got a wee bit of dry flour, just rub the hands with it and it will take it off it. Otherwise, the hat's back on the bread and we set it off to the side. So I'm just going to give my hands a quick wash. So I think the peppers and the onions are pretty well cooked here, even though they're on low. So what I'm going to do is put the tomatoes in with them now, just to buy me a little bit of time. That'll stop them from burning and stop them from sticking. So I'm just going to get my tin of tomatoes, chopped tomatoes. And if you've bought plum tomatoes by mistake, then just go in with a pair of scissors and give them a quick snipper. Even whenever you pop them in the pan, just snip them with scissors. That's a good idea. That's something for you too. So there we go. So just pop that in with your peppers. Maybe you've got your chorizo in there or your bacon in there and your onions. Okay, so we'll just do a quick duplicate that there. So that's it, just in the cooker. And we're going to add into that now, we're going to add our lentils, and we're going to add some of the sweet potatoes in that as well. So what I might actually do just to start with is just add about a tin of water. So there's the tin that I had for my tomatoes, and I'm just gonna do that for now, just to keep that from sticking or anything like that while we get the other ingredients ready. So doesn't really matter what order you put these in at now, these lentils and sweet potatoes, they're all going to take about the same time to cook. So I'm maybe going to peel and chop my monster sweet potato, or if you've 2 or 3 smaller ones. And we want these into small cubes, small dice as well. So just, we don't want big lumps of potato in here, because we are going to eat this not blended. And of course the sweet potato just much more nutritional than the white potato. Although having made the potato and leek soup with the kids today, now I have to say you can't beat a nice bowl of potato and leek soup. I think it's in our blood here in Northern Ireland to have potato and leek soup.
Diane has asked, can you blend it if that was the preference?
You could. You could blend it, and in fact, the only difference would be you would probably have to add a little bit more water to it to blend it, because once you blend sweet potatoes and you blend lentils, they thicken even more. So you're probably looking at, if you wanted it blended, and it is nice blended with the red lentils. However, Deirdre, is that there would you wouldn't blend the green lentils. If you were doing it with the green lentils, you wouldn't blend them. They're much more, they're bite a lot more, so they're really good as to be chunky. But the red lentils you can blend. So yeah, you could do that for sure, but just there'll be more liquid in it. So depending on the sweet potatoes you got, you might have 2 or 3 to do like so. I just cut them in half, put them on their flat. Just keep it, every time you can get it down onto its flat.
Sharon, another question from Avril. The olive oil for the bread, is it extra virgin, or which would you use?
This one is. I think this one is from like B&M Bargains or something like that, because I don't recognise the brand name. It can be any olive oil, but preferably the extra virgin one. So, you can make the bread without oil. I don't find it just as easy. I find the oil really helps it, gets it really sorted out. But you can just make it with the flour and the water and the salt. So maybe especially for calorie counting, you could leave the oil out of it. I just find that it's easier to work with. It's a little bit more stretchy and a little bit more pliable. So I'm just getting this into dice. So again, this weighed in at 800 grams or something like that. It was a whopper, but I think around 600 grams is fine. I wouldn't blend it with the bacon in it though. Sorry, that's just come into my head. If you had little bits of bacon or chorizo in it, I wouldn't blend those in it. I would leave it as a chunky soup. I would only blend it with the vegetarian version. And in fact, if I'm making just ordinary lentil soup, I would add a sweet potato in with it actually anyway, if I'm blending it, and it just gives it a nice creaminess and a nice flavour. Having grown sweet potatoes myself, I really am amazed at the size of this one.
Yeah, it's pretty big, isn't it?
Oh, they are hard to grow now. We grew them two years ago in the polytunnel, but they just take up a lot of space and you don't really get much out of it, you know. So I would say most of our sweet potatoes come from the States. They come from America.
Right.
They're hard to grow here, and you would need a lot of land and heat. Especially to grow them that size.
They are lovely, but I love sweet potato.
Yeah, they are. I think we've got they're really used to them now.
You see them on a lot of menus in restaurants, sweet potato fries even, and sweet.
Yeah, and I think I put them in the shepherd's pie then, didn't I? That wasn't.
You did.
Oh, that wasn't last week. I meant how did the crumble go? Did anybody make the crumble then? Oh, Louise's sauce. I meant to get an update on Louise's sauce.
Well, yeah, I ended up throwing that out and I remade the sauce again, and it was still a little bit, I don't know what I did. It was still a little bit runny, but I added a little bit of corn flour to it and it was absolutely fine. Like, it really did thicken up and it was lovely. Yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
Please send us.
I made it as well.
Oh, did you?
I had tried making it with the coconut flour, and it wasn't a success either. It was like Louise's; it had to go in the bin. And then I redid it with normal flour, and it was fine. But I made two and froze one, and actually had it tonight. And I found there wasn't enough sauce in it.
It had gone very thick, had it then?
Yeah. And I thought, I don't know whether, to me I'd followed the recipe, but I thought the crumble was very thick on the top of it as well.
Oh, right, okay. Right, okay. Well, I don't know, mine came out, the sauce did dry up a little bit in the oven, depending on how long it stayed in the oven for. It did sort of soak up that sauce a bit, for sure. I noticed that actually. But then again, I suppose it was kind of meant to just be juicy rather than saucy afterwards, if you know what I mean. It was, but the crumble was fine. No, mine it wasn't thick. And what flour did you use for the crumble then? Was it just plain flour?
No, I had made I'd made it with the coconut flour.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
But it come out the same texture as yours, which
yeah.
I thought then it was okay.
But it felt thick then, did it? Maybe.
It just felt as if it was too thick a layer.
Yes.
I thought it would have been nicer if it would have been a lighter layer.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with coconut flour now, to be honest. I haven't used it much, so I'm not really sure what way it works for the crumble, but and was that butter you used as well with the coconut flour? Or?
Yes, everything else was as normal. But to be honest, if I was making it again, I would make it the crumble with normal flour.
Yeah, okay.
And try that.
Okay, well that's good to know then, because I'm not familiar with the coconut flour, so unfortunately I can't say, but I enjoyed it. Now, we liked it, but the kids didn't take, I think because I had mushrooms in it, that was the thing. My kids wouldn't eat it then because there was mushrooms in it. But I mean, I thought...
Don't forget to send us pictures, Sharon, now of all these, when you cook something.
Oh, yes, I did. Now, I sent the crumble last week, but I sent it just out of the oven. I should have sent it when it was on my plate.
Did you send it to Anne-Marie? Or did you?
Yes, I sent it to her on WhatsApp last week.
You must have sent it out to everybody. I don't know. Did you? Anybody? I don't know.
I didn't.
No,
Oh, well, I'll ask about that. And if you take a picture of the wheaten bread tonight or your other stuff,
yes,
send it all to Anne-Marie and I'll make sure it gets sent out to everybody.
Okay. Maybe better to email it. I think I'd sent it via WhatsApp, so it might have got missed in the...
You might have forgot. I'll get on to Anne-Marie about that. Somebody's asked a question here. What weight of lentils for the soup?
About 200 grams, 200, 250. It's, let's see, where are my lentils? Yeah. So they come in 500 gram bags usually. So just under half a bag. So about 200 grams of lentils. You do need to give those a rinse though. So I'm going to give them a rinse and get them in the pot now. And then just for stock, I'm going to go ahead and boil the kettle up for this. It'll just get it done quicker. Split lentils are not the same. No. This recipe will work for red lentils. Split lentils would go in the likes of vegetable broth. There are a few different. Somebody's asking how to rinse the lentils. I'm rinsing them I'm just putting them in the sieve and rinsing them under the tap.
Is that the same for balsamic rice, it says here? Is that how you rinse balsamic rice?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Just that's what Eva's asked.
Okay, sorry. I'm just rinsing them in a sieve underneath the tap until the water runs a little bit clear. So usually whenever you're rinsing dried goods, you can see it's cloudy water. That's just rinsing any excess dust or anything off it that might be on it, or any starchiness, and so it'll run clear. I'm going to stick the kettle on for the stock though, so and I'm just going to use, I'm just looking for my sieve. So yes, if you're weighing them out, it's about 200 grams, or it's just less than half a bag. And yeah, so it's about sort of 3/4 of my sieve there. I'm just going to give them a good rinse and straight into the pot then once they're rinsed into the pot. Okay, so we'll go back over here and we'll just get the rest of the stock and that into the pot. So that's our...
Sorry, Sharon, Eve has asked how much stock. Eve, did you get I don't know where Eve got the recipe sent through.
I'm putting about 1.5 litres in, I think. It's 1.5 or 2, so we're going to just play it by ear according to what your potato level is here. And to make that up, I'm going to use about 4 teaspoons of the stock that I use, or you could use, for this size of a pot, so this is making a decent sized pot soup, you could use maybe 2 stock cubes. The only thing that would change my mind on that would be if you had used bacon or chorizo, because there's salt in that. So you would maybe use a little bit less stock. Of course, the beauty of using the bouillon powder like that is that you can add a little bit and then you can add some more later once it's cooked.
Another question, Sharon. Sheena's asked, can you put asparagus in the soup and when would you add it?
This one, I can't see it going. I wouldn't waste asparagus in a soup like this, to be honest. This is very much like a store cupboard type, you know, all of these ingredients you can get pretty much all year round. So that's what makes it a good wintry type soup. Asparagus isn't in season at the minute. So on that basis, I would say no, I wouldn't put asparagus in it. If you really wanted to put something like a green vegetable in it, you could just put it a bit closer to the end of the soup, you know, if it's not going to take too long to cook. Asparagus doesn't take very long to cook. But for me, it wouldn't blend well with these particular flavors, if that makes sense. So I'm putting in equivalent of about 4 teaspoons of the stock, and then I'm adding now, I think that's about 1.5 litres, maybe just below it. And I'm just going to give that a stir and see how I think. I'm happy with that for now. As the lentils start to thicken and expand, I'll take a wee check on that, but I think that's going to be just fine the way it is. So for my amount of, for 200 grams of lentils and that one big sweet potato, I think it's about 1.3 litres. And
It smells nice, does it?
It does smell nice now, although I had a wee sneaky fish from the chippy earlier.
Should a cook be admitting to that?
I think so. I think everybody should have a wee.
You can have a day off, can't you?
I haven't had one for a long, long time, and I wasn't well recently, and it was on my mind whenever I wasn't well. I thought, you know, if I'm able to eat properly again and I get through this, there's something I really want to have, and that's a fish supper. So earlier, so I'm cooking all this food here, but there's been nobody eating it tonight. So where are we now? We've got our soup on. We need to get back to our bread. So again, I'm just going to give the hands a wee freshen up and get the bread back out, because this will probably be our last mix of this one, and then I'll show you what happens with it. Just turn that soup up and get it bubbling now. So you can put a lid on it as well there if
Sharon.
Yeah.
What time are we stopping for tea?
We're nearly done. We'll get this wee crusty loaf sorted out. I think we probably will not do the potato and leek here on the show. We've got the recipe for it, and it's quite straightforward. The only thing I do think is nice, or that might be different than others, is that I take half of my potato and leek soup out and blend the half of it, and then I put it back in again. And I think that gives it a lovely creaminess, but still leaves I like the bits in the potato and leek soup. So that would be my only tip. It's on the recipe there anyway, so I think we can finish up with how.
Yeah, I think you've given us enough. You've given us 3 different things tonight, so.
I know it was a lot to get through actually, but it's good. It's good to have a couple of recipes in reserve there for soup. So Mary, how are you getting on? Good. Okay. So the last turn of this, then we've got our bread mix back out. So if you're sticking with us with the crusty bread, you're going to find a difference in it now when you mix it up. So I'm going to put a little bit more oil in if you're using the oil, and we're going to do that same thing again. Now you'll notice a big difference in it now. Okay, it's really stretchy. We're stretching it out. You can do it in the bowl the way we did it before, pulling it up, stretching it. There's a big difference in this now after sitting there for that time. It should be nice and...
It's a bit like when you see those guys making pizzas, you know, flipping the stuff about, you know, it's all stretchy.
It is, and it should get nice and stretchy. Now at this stage, we're still working it round into that where we're tucking everything underneath again. So giving it a good stretch out and then tucking it all in so that it's like a ball. Now at this point, you can go ahead and make pizzas. All you're going to need there is to divide this up into about 4, have some extra flour for rolling it out, and away you go. Same for flatbreads, same for dough balls. You can break it up into little bits and bake them in the oven. For the loaf, if you're going for the loaf though, you're going to leave this again. So you're going to leave it sitting now for about at least half an hour. After that, it'll have risen up. I mean, if you can leave it for an hour, the longer you can leave it here, the better. You can't leave it all day or all night though, because it keeps growing and growing, and then the yeast will die off in it again, so you'll miss that opportunity where it's sitting ready to be a nice soft crusty loaf. You can make it at night and stick it in the fridge overnight and bake it in the morning if you get into the way of doing that. I've done that before, but then I've come down and found that it has kept it growing through the night in my fridge and made its way out over the bowl and stuff like that. So I would just say, if you're about the house for a couple of hours, this is done and dusted. Again, I use my non-stick paper and put it on a baking tray. If you don't have non-stick paper, don't use oil or anything like that. Just sprinkle some flour onto a baking tray, and then what you will do to finish it is you're just going to set it out like this, Louise, onto a baking tray for the oven, okay? You can flatten it out a wee bit here if you want. It's risen considerably, so this is quite flat. I'm going to put it back in a minute and let it rise a bit more. It's nice and smooth. It's a lot smoother than it was. But I'm just going to slice into the top of it. I wonder, will one of my kiddies knives do that? So what I'm going to do is just slice with a sharp knife across it. So it's almost going right down into it. Like that. And you'll see it sort of spring back up as you do that. And that's it, good for the oven. I would give it a good half an hour. Now mine still looks a little bit petite. I'm going to let it grow again and then take a picture of it later on whenever it comes out, because ideally if you can let that nearly even double in size, it would be great. At this stage, mine's probably going to go about half again, and then I'll bake it. It's going to look a bit rustic. It's a bit rough around the edges, but it's going to be delicious. I make it all the time, and you can't go wrong. Just give it the right time in the oven, at least 30 minutes. Maybe a little more depending on your oven. In a good hot oven, about 180. You'll know your own oven. 180 and then maybe down to 160 or 200 down to 180, depending on your oven. And give it as long. When you take it out, and you can tap the bottom of it, sort of give it a tap. Again, if it's like a hollow sound, it's probably cooked. And if it's dense sounding, then it might need a little longer. I think cooking it a little bit longer just doesn't do it any. All it's going to do is give it an extra crusty crust, which is fine for dipping in your soup. Your soup will rescue that crusty bread. For the wheaten bread, when it comes out, if you don't want it really crusty, because you have to cut into it and that, and you want it a bit softer of a crust, just wrap it in a clean tea towel as it's cooling, and that will take the crustiness off the top of it. Same you could do for the crusty bread, but I think it's nice for it to be crusty. So the last thing I would say about the soup is it's bubbling away there now. It doesn't take very long. We're probably looking at just another 10 minutes, 15 minutes for that. And at the very end, just slicing up the basil and adding it at the very end of it. So just finely slicing that. But don't put it in now, put it in just before just as it's finished, If you were blending it, if you chose to blend it, you could add a little bit more liquid and put the basil in before you blend it as well. Cleaning up wise, that's my dog moaning in the corner. Cleaning up wise, this stuff here, it's better to scrape this out. And, if you've got something, there's wee tools you can get for doing it. Probably I'm going to use my kids' knife, and just scrape that stuff out into the bin rather than washing it down the sink, Oh, flatbread, sorry. Flatbread doesn't go in the oven. I should have showed you that. I could show you that. Flatbread goes in a pan like that. So what you would do now, if you wanted to make flatbreads, you would break that up. I'm not going to, because I know that my kids love this crusty loaf. So you break it up into little balls, roll it out with a rolling pin, and straight into the pan, nice and thin, just straight into the pan. a little bit of flour on it, but no oil or butter again, nice and hot, and it takes about 3-4 minutes on each side, not even actually, 3 minutes on each side, and that's it. If you put some butter, some chopped herbs, or just jam, I don't know. It's lovely. So that's a quick way. You could do the flatbreads, you could have those for supper. They're very quick, and that'll make about, so 4 pizzas, it could make like 10 flatbreads or something like that, you know, depending on the size of the pan. Again, they're good for the barbecue, rolling out the flatbread. You can just stick them straight onto the barbecue. But otherwise, a grill pan is nice for them, if you know, with the little grooves.
Yeah.
That's nice for them too. Gives the little black lines on it, or just like this.
And then
so
could you freeze that then afterwards? Then, if you weren't eating them all, could you freeze the flatbreads?
You can. You could wrap them up and freeze them. Yeah, I haven't done, but then I've never had such a thing as leftover flatbreads here, because once we start with them, you know, and they're coming off the pan hot and the butter's going on melting, you know.
And there's a wee question from Diane, sorry. The potato and leek soup recipe, which I'm looking at now, she says it doesn't say how much cream and stock to add. You've put in a little cream.
Okay, that is entirely your choice. So when I say a little cream, I am probably just adding what you would suppose to call a splash of cream, which would be possibly about 3 or 4 tablespoons for that measurement. Some people like soup a lot creamier than that, so it's really something that you need to maybe add a little bit, try it, add a little bit more. I find that if the leeks are nice and the potatoes are nice and you've blended the half of it, sometimes, like today, we didn't add any cream. That's still not opened. The kids loved it the way it was, so I didn't bother. So I think it depends on your ingredients. Sometimes if the leeks are maybe a little bit strong or a little bit bitter, this just takes that off and gives it that nice, you know. This one's double cream, actually. This one's double cream, but it doesn't matter. Any cream, and I have used that dairy-free cream substitute as well, and it's not the main part of the soup, it's just taking off any little bitterness or any little strong flavour at the end, just sort of making it a little bit smoother, you know. So it's so that's your choice. Stock wise, I don't like to specify too much as well, because I think that's up to the individual. For that size of pot, like the potato and leek soup will make the same amount that this one has made. And I would say that you're looking at 2 stock cubes or 2 stock pots for it. You know, it's a substantial, it's actually serving maybe 6 bowls of soup, you know, out of each recipe there, you know, or 4 big ones. So I'm going to do a last quick check on the pot as it is now, just before we go, and see what... Yeah, I'll just bring you over quickly, because I know I've probably kept you quite late tonight, so that was a lot of bread making. My neighbours are going to be happy now when they get these loaves delivered. So it's, if you can see, I don't know if you can for the steam, but it's really thickened up there. So you do want to watch for lentils. They could stick a little bit to the bottom of the pot if you don't give it a wee stir halfway through. This is very thick. So
it is funky looking, isn't it?
It's really thick now. I had thought that perhaps my liquid was under 1.5 litres. I thought that it was plenty at the time, but the lentils have amazed me again, and I'll just add another little bit of liquid. Again, tomorrow, this is going to be thicker, so that's why I was saying the next day whenever you go to eat it. So it's nice and thick. It's up to you now, you know what way you like that. So it is a chunky soup. And then just to finish, I'll throw the basil in now, because I know it's all cooked. And I'll just very quickly, I don't put the stalks in now of the basil, so if I'm making tomato and basil soup, I use the stalks, but this is going in at the end. There's beautiful smell coming off. the basil. I can't beat that fresh basil actually, and you'll see just how that sort of
Looks great.
the wee extra bit of colour in it and flavour in it just makes it really, it's lovely. That goes nice, wee bit of salt, pepper at the end there, nice black pepper at the end, it's lovely. So hopefully some of you will try that. Like I say, it's a good sized pot. And oh, somebody's saying they use callow stock cubes. Yeah, is there? I didn't see what the question was, Paula. With
She uses callow stock cubes that don't taste salty. How does bouillon compare?
there's different ones. So they are low salt, but they wouldn't be as low salt as callow. So with the callow, you usually need a little bit of extra stock if you want to get a lot of flavour out of it. I think you're still better leaving people salt and pepper really till they're sitting at the table. And
Funny, I made vegetable soup at the weekend and I used that callow low salt because I would tend to find that the other stock cubes leave it very salty. But I actually only used one as opposed to using two, and the soup didn't taste the same. You know, so, I'll know to do that the next time.
They are very different. They're extremely low in salt. Now the bouillon powder, there's different ones you can get, and there is one that's like extra low in salt. It's not always available in the supermarket, but it is in the health shop. So you can get one like that. You know, they are low in salt. I find that the vegan one is lower in salt again than that green one that I'm using. And I think the only reason that's not vegan is there's maybe lactose or something in it actually. Yeah, the callow is much lower in salt than any of those. But they're good. They're nice flavors. You just need to get used to using them, and they're usually, I think they're always organic as well, which is super. So happy enough, Louise, you've survived another.
Yes, I've survived. I was just going to ask, I have a little printout here. It was just what was in this soup, but it wasn't, or on the bread, it wasn't any of the weights or the measurements.